Welcome.
Welcome, my friends. So, from the New Hope, or A New Hope, coming back to the Phantom Menace, 5M1, the High Council meeting. So let's take it through from its beginning. I'm just going to look at the first few bars and talk about where all of these notes come from. There we go, and then I'll take the each section as it comes. So there are two different elements to this. First of all, we've got our single line synth part, and then this extraordinary sort of G sharp minor and G major chord in the basses and cello, and then in the wind as well. Really extraordinary sort of thing here. And then we've got two different sorts of hexatonic set, one which is 6Z19, the other which is 620. They're slightly different. Anyway, back to this. First of all, 3/8 is usually an Italian sixth. Like that, but sort of inverted. But it doesn't have any of those connotations at all. It's not a dominant in any sense of the word, but it is from ultimately an octatonic scale. So that's octatonic. This one here, 419, is actually a hexatonic scale, or from a hexatonic scale. So this one, 419, is a major chord with a flat 6, or you could say an augmented chord with a major 7th. Either one will do. In my polychords sheet, which I've done for patrons, I've done some of these, and so we've got different forms of 419. We've got this one here, which I've said is a minor chord with a major seventh, but you could have also a major chord with a flat six, and also going further on, we can also have a major chord with a sharp 5 as well. So there are two different sort of versions of this idea. But ultimately, it comes from this 620 set here, which goes semitone and then minor third, semitone, minor third, semitone, like that. And there are lots of different sort of chords that you can get from it as well. So, you know, if you substitute G flat for F sharp, I've got my D and then my little flat 6 as well. And of course they can be rearranged and inverted in all sorts of different ways. Often it's found in close position, that one. But here it's not. It's in fact so widely spaced. And it gives it that air of sort of cathedral-like space. If you ever want to know about that, then Debussy's The Sunken Cathedral. The right hand starts at the very top of the piano and the left hand starts at the very bottom of the piano. And it creates that huge amount of sort of bell-like space. Then we've got, from this small sort of set of pitches, going on to an octatonic set. It sounds quite atonal, but actually it's very much part of the octatonic scale starting on D. This is the semitone tone scale. So we've got our C, we've got our A flat, we've got our D, F sharp, and E flat. But it sounds quite atonal. Obviously, I don't have all the right octave displacement on here, but we can get that idea. So we've got, augmented fourth. It's interesting having a major third afterwards. And then this semitone as well. Well, actually diminished seventh. Really interesting. It's sort of a very strange sort of combination of pitches, which disguise the fact that it's octatonic, and that's the main thing. So then we move on into another set here as well, where we've got lots of different sorts of things going on. Really, the main thing is that these strings are going from G sharp minor with a B in the bass, and then up to a G major chord, like that. And that is from a 6Z19. So back to our little thing here. Well, I do talk about it. Whoops, suddenly got away from me. Here we go. So another type of hexatonic scale here, but actually derived from the Hungarian minor. So take a minor chord and put another minor chord above it, starting major seventh apart. You can do that, but there's also different forms. So in this case, we've got G sharp minor and G major, which comes out as 522. It's just that 522's digits, as it were, the actual notes, are from 6Z19. So if you just add one more note, that's what it becomes. And, you know, part of this sort of analysis is discovering all of these little subsets and things. Really intriguing. So in this case, we've got G sharp minor and G major. It's interesting that he starts with the first inversion chord and then goes to a second to get that sort of minor third feel. It's very effective indeed. So then we also have a different sort of hexatonic set at the top as well. So we've got the minor and then, in other words, semitone, minor third set. So two different sorts of hexatonic set at the same time. In this case, it's, you know, not meant to have a particular tonal center because it's ambiguous. Of course, otherwise, why would you use metal mutes and things like that? But we've got that sort of type of pitch complex there, which I think if we've heard Phantom Menace, even from the very first cue that I analysed, that hexatonic set is used pretty much all the way through. So it's intriguing that it's there in this cue, which is sort of halfway through the film, or a little bit more than halfway through the film at this point. So then we've got the next little segment. So I shall go back to the video. Here we go. So just some very small little sets here of 4 notes, first of all, 0, 1, 3, 4. So we've seen that octatonic set many, many times in Williams's work. Not always in action music, so in this case it's not. And then we've seen this 3-3 set, 0, 1, 4 I call it. 0, 1, 4 I just mean 0 is C, 1 is C sharp, 2, 3, 4 is E. And of course through various bits of sort of interval inversions, rather interval inversions, we know what it is. But if you want to know, definitely then just use a pitch class set calculator, which is freely available online, if you find yourself geeking out at any point. So the next segment in this one goes back to some of the octatonic and hexatonic sets that we've seen before. So 418 is from an octatonic scale. 419, as I've just said, is from a hexatonic scale. So he's mixing up the two in this instance here. So 418B, this is something I mentioned in the polychord and wrong note bass video that I did. So at this point we've got C sharp diminished and then C sharp minor in the bass. It's just as an interesting spacing here where we have E very low and G, which is actually consonants. But we've got this. It actually sounds a bit like the beginning of Lord of the Rings, doesn't it? Yeah, anyway, there we go. 418B. So, yes, creating a lot of space in this point, and then it changes slightly. He's got slightly different chords here. He is very fond of those half-diminished seventh chords. In this case, it's just one chord that happens to sort of just be present, linking two different sort of chords together. In this case, a sort of C-sharp minor type and then a G-sharp minor type going through A, which is an unusual progression, really. Like that. And definitely something almost sort of Bruckner-esque about it. I remember talking about Ecce Sacerdos Magna, which goes through sort of those sorts of ideas, going down thirds or up thirds as well. Really interesting. That wonderful low rumble of the bass drum and tam-tam. And then suddenly Anakin's theme. And then this ominous sort of bass creeps in. Suddenly D minor. And then I'm just going to take it back. So this requires quite a lot of just thought about, really. It's a complicated passage because we've got this Anakin's theme, which is very quartal or quintal. So it's just the first half of it. So we expect to find the harmony sort of emphasizing the intervals in the melody. It's a technique that Bartók used quite a lot. So that's unsurprising that we've got a G7. I don't have the fifth. Over C. It was called a retardation cadence in the classical period. Like that. But here it's completely different context. And it's interesting how here he's just making use of this continuity, sort of B and the D, which isn't actually there in the chord, but it is there in the melody, becomes a little pivot note for this next chord. And having the stability of C as a pedal note means that everything feels rather static and delayed, which is exactly the effect that he wants. And then he's got these sort of ominous chords, almost sort of Emperor-esque. And then we've got this augmented chord because of the A flat and C, which is just emphasised in the harp very, very slightly. So we've got this augmented chord. It's quite an unusual and bold modulation here. He literally just goes up a passing note to D minor, but then immediately puts a ninth in the bass, which then feels like another suspension, but it's not. Well, it is, but it's just it's not going to A minor. And now it's changing as well. So we feel as though it could be going to F minor, it could be going somewhere else actually at this point. But notice how everything sort of coalesces in one. This is just a new phrase of Anakin's theme. So we've ended up on D minor. So yeah, we would expect to see that sort of A7 chord over D. But now we've got trombones coming in. And actually, they produce the fifth for a B flat minor chord in second inversion at this point. I don't always put the inversions in, by the way. And then we have this sort of religious bit of music. So that's really lovely, isn't it? B flat minor to B major. Wonderful. And then a suspension. And then this sort of Sibelius-esque, and I mean that by as in the composer. So G sharp minor. And then a half diminished chord. Wonderful. And then we've got this extraordinary dissonance, which just sort of suddenly appears in only, I think, the clarinet 2. It's not doubled anywhere else. So I put E7 with a flat 5. Add sharp 7. Like that. There we go. Absolutely bizarre. And then ending up on G sharp. G sharp minor. Let's just take it back a bit. It's that extraordinary chord. You might sort of think it's an error, but it's not. They played it anyway. It was obviously what he intended, or else it would never have got recorded. That's really lovely, isn't it? Sort of ending up on G sharp minor, but at this point, in fact, it feels like G sharp minor, but it's just actually a monad. It's just one note. And here we've got this D sharp or E flat, obviously two different strings on the harp. You can't sort of reiterate the notes otherwise very clearly or cleanly. So using that as a dominant pedal of G sharp minor. And of course, the first chord is G sharp minor. Brilliant. And it just goes back in block chordal minor triads. Then imitation, the lower wind, second inversions, first inversion, second inversion. I think that should be just a normal G sharp minor chord. Now the strings come in for a little bit of warmth. G sharp sus4. Really extraordinary. So it ends on B. So we've got this sort of chordal harmony that comes in after the brass trombone chords. So we've got these minor chords, a major third apart. And then we've got this coming in here, the trombones. It's quite dissonant. So it's got that G against the F sharp. And then this extraordinary chord here. A sharp, B, E flat and G, A, like that. And then it ends on B. It's a really surprising cadence. You wouldn't get that in Bach, would you? Notice also that often it's in the horns that we get these things. So 6 horns playing those notes. He would double up the top note, by the way. If you've got 5 notes, just use horn 3 for the top note. What a really interesting little cue. It's just got lots of small bits of interest in there. And really the teaching point from it is this sort of single line melody drawn from mostly octatonic sets, but not always. He's got a little bit of a hexatonic set here, then morphing into minor triads, but then making those part of 2 different hexatonic sets here, and then morphing through. It's interesting, the tonality-wise, it's very hard to say what's going on because there isn't really any sort of major tonal center. Or a lasting one, shall we say. So it starts in G sharp minor. We're then getting into C sharp minor, which then becomes F major, essentially, with Anakin's theme. And then we're suddenly into B flat minor, F major, B flat minor, right, okay. Then G sharp minor. And that continues for a little bit, up until we end up on B. So it's a really extraordinary sort of journey of, tonal centers that sort of seems to not obviously be chosen at random, but they're quite disparate. They're not necessarily related keys with each other at all. So hopefully you found that of interest, and we'll look next time I see you. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do next week, actually. I'm torn slightly between doing a little bit of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, or carrying on with Phantom. I think I'm going to carry on with Phantom because there are a few more to do there before it gets into dangerous territory, although I have managed to orally dictate and find bits of score from the duel that begins, which was never written down, but it was turned into the concert suite, Duel of the Fates, but it's just cobbled together from that. So I no idea what they must have done in the cutting room, but basically a lot of Williams's music was just completely snipped apart, especially in that latter half of the film where it segues from lots of different scenes. Difficult to sort of run with. And I think I'm probably going to tackle it so that I take each cue separately. So it won't necessarily relate to the actual film version. I mean, it will, but I'm just going to look at each cue because there's more benefit, I think, to treating each cue separately rather than segueing suddenly from one cue to another and then back again. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'll be interested in your thoughts about that. As soon as I hit 500 subscribers, I can put some suggestions down. So, but anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.